This brings us to our Lifetime Achievement Award. This year's honoree has made servant leadership and the championing of people his indelible signature. And we're honored that the man he worked closely with for 2 decades at Starbucks considered tonight's event important enough to come up and introduce him. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Executive Chairman of Starbucks Corporation, Howard Schultz.
Good evening. It's been a wonderful evening to hear all the award winners and hear the stories and the emotion, the inspiration, and just sitting here. It's so proud to be in the city of Seattle. I want to begin by just saying that we're living in a very fragile time in America. And I think one of the issues that we are all longing for is servant leadership and dignity and respect. And I want to really acknowledge the Seattle Business Magazine for celebrating leadership tonight at a time in America where we really desperately need to be reminded of the importance of it. So thank you so much. I find myself sitting in my seat thinking about what I was going to say and feeling a great deal of emotion tonight. And so if emotion somehow takes over me, I want to apologize in advance. I want to introduce the word love. I think it's not a word that's generally used too much in the corridors of business, but I want to publicly acknowledge that the Lifetime Achievement Award winner, Howard Behar, is someone I love. So I love you. And I'm proud to say that. Howard Behar joined Starbucks Coffee Company in 1989. We had less than 30 stores. We had a dream to create a national company that would be a different kind of company, that would achieve the balance between profit and conscience. And when Howard joined the company, I think he came to Starbucks in many ways to learn the coffee business. But what he did not realize is that he did not come to learn, he ended up teaching. And he is a teacher. He taught us about the importance of truly honoring humanity, the human spirit, a set of values, guiding principles, core purpose, reason for being, and acknowledging all the way through from where we were in 1989 to where we are today with 28,000 stores, 76 countries, 100 million people a week coming through our stores, 350,000 employees who we call partners. And despite the fact that Howard has not been with us for a number of years inside the company, everything that he came to learn about the company that he ended up teaching us has been deeply imprinted and will be imprinted in the tradition and the heritage of our company in perpetuity. Starbucks now has stores, as I said, in countries all over the world. And I think what we've learned is that there is a universal condition around humanity. And I think Howard taught us that lesson. And we've learned that in places far, far from Seattle, in Japan, in China, in Spain, in Mexico, throughout the world, that the universality of longing for human connection, for being respected and valued, not for ringing the register or trying to get the money out of a customer's hand, but by touching their hearts and celebrating the people who do the work. That is what Howard Behar taught us. And when I think about servant leadership, the essence of it is being in service to others. Howard Behar's life work has been in the service of others. The success of Starbucks Coffee Company, which none of us could have possibly imagined, is deeply rooted in the authorship, the leadership, and the love that Howard Behar provided Starbucks Coffee Company. And on behalf of 350,000 people who proudly wear the cloth of the company, the green apron, we thank you for all the lessons that you have taught us. And I promise you, those lessons are deeply imprinted throughout the world, carrying the torch of what you taught us. I love you, Howard Behar.
Wow. Wow. That gets me. So, how do you top that one, huh? What an incredible honor to be part of this, a celebration of leadership. It's not about being an executive, it's about being a leader. It's so meaningful to share this with my family. Most of all, my 4 grandchildren are here, and the 2 that aren't here, and my kids, my wife. There's nothing better than family, is there? That's what it's all about. Except our family is bigger than just our immediate family, isn't it? It's the whole family. It's our community. It's the world in which we live in. There's only one person missing here tonight, and I wish that he could be here, a man named Orin Smith. And for those of you... So Orin is battling some serious health issues. So tonight when you go home, just say a little prayer for Orin. He could use the help. So when John Meisenbach called and he said, Howard? I said, yes. So this is John Meisenbach. I said, hi, John, how you doing? We don't talk that much, so I knew something was up. So he said, well, Seattle Business Magazine would like to honor you with an award. I said, John, this is Howard Behar, not Howard Schultz. I think you got the wrong Howard. So Howard, and Orin, they called us H2O. Howard Schultz, the big dreamer, the never say no guy, there was nothing ever too big for him to accomplish. Orin Smith, skills in making things happen and the patience to see them through. We called him the tortoise. And me, the nutcase. Always stirring things up, Mr. Emotion, and always kind of just on the verge of out of control. And he put up with me. It always takes a team. And in our case, it was a big team. Support center partners, baristas, store managers, field leaders, all around the world. I remember the first all-hands-on meeting here in Seattle at Key Arena. And there were 7,000 people coming to that meeting. And it was the first time we'd ever brought everybody together. And I remember Howard and I we were sitting down in the front, and we got up and we looked around as the people streamed in. The place was just filling up. And we both asked the same question at the same time. How the hell did this happen? And the answer was simple. The people in the arena, all the Starbucks partners, they made it happen, not Howard and Orin and myself. All H2O did was set the tone, live the values, and knock down the hurdles. In essence, our job was to serve our people on the journey of creating the Starbucks you see today. The better we serve, the better the results. It was really that simple. And isn't that what life is all about? In business, we get confused. We think it's about the P&L statement, the balance sheet, and the stock price. It's not. It's about being of service to people, to the people we work with, the ones we serve, those in our communities, those in the world we live in. There's really only one pathway to results, and that is through service to people. It doesn't make any difference what your job title is. There's really only one reason for being. Whether you're a widget maker, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, a CFO, it doesn't make any difference. Yes, even the lowly widget maker's job is about serving people. The widget maker that makes a widget that goes into a printing press. The printing press gets sold to a publisher. The publisher produces a magazine or newspaper that gets delivered to somebody's home to inform or entertain them. The widget maker is making a difference in people's lives. And the key is figuring out that connection. Usually we lose sight of that connection. And when we lose sight of our connection, we get burnt, we say to ourselves, we get burned out or we're bored. But it's really not, if you're staying focused on that connection, you will never get burned out or bored. You may get tired, but that's all it will be. I'd like to tell you 2 stories tonight about serving people. So there are about 2 Jims. The first Jim was a store manager up in the Broadway district here in Seattle. And I'd been with the company about 3 months, and Jim called me, and Jim had been there quite a long time by that time. And Jim called me and said, I'd like to come see you and Howard Schultz. Well, being the new executive, I thought to myself, I can handle this. You know, what is it, Jim? Maybe I can do it for you. We don't really need to see Howard Schultz. And he said, no, I really do need to see Howard Schultz as well. So I said, okay, I'll set up the meeting. So I did, and the day arrived, and Jim came, and I went to get him out in the front desk, and I brought him back to Howard's office, and Howard was on the phone, and we sat down. Howard had a little love seat in his office, and both Jim and I sat down on the love seat and together. And Howard got off the phone, and so they knew each other quite well, and so Howard was saying, how you doing? And so me being kind of an A-type personality, which I saw afterward, I was sorry I was so much that day. I said, so Jim, what can we do for you? And that question got answered in a way that I would have never imagined. He said, I need to tell you both that I'm dying of AIDS. Now, this was in 1989. It was early stages of really understanding what AIDS was all about. And as he was talking, I'm thinking to myself, is this catchy? And, you know, I caught myself kind of moving a hair away, and how sorry I am I did that. So a tear came down Howard's face, and Howard said, well, Jim, what can we do for you? And Jim said, well, Howard, I'd like to work as long as I can work. And without blinking an eye, now remember, we didn't know whether AIDS, was it a virus, what is it? And we're in the food service business. Howard said, Jim, you can work as long as you can work. And then Howard asked him a question. He said, Jim, what are you going to do when you can't work anymore? How are you going to have enough money to live on? And Jim said, well, there's some agencies around town that are being developed that support people like me that have AIDS and are dying of AIDS. And Howard said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Now remember, this is a company that was losing money at the time. We didn't know whether we had a company or we didn't have a company. We loved it, but we didn't know whether we were going to make it. So Howard said, absolutely not. We will pay you until the day you pass away, your salary. And then Howard asked him another question. He said, what are you going to do about your health insurance? It's got to be quite expensive with all the drugs and everything that you're going to have to take. And Jim said, well, again, there's agencies that will help. And Howard said, no, you will be on our health insurance until you die. Now, again, a company losing money, we had no idea what the cost was going to be involved. And here was a young CEO. He was 34 at the time, you know, building a business, and he didn't even blink. Did not even blink. And after that meeting, Jim lived for about less than a year, and of course we took care of him. But what kind of message do you think that said to me? A new executive on the team, I said to myself, I can do anything I need to do in service to another human being. And that message went throughout the company. And time after time, we lived up to that commitment of taking care of our people. The second story about Jim is a Big Jim. Big Jim was a customer of Starbucks in Santa Monica. He was in a retirement home, a nursing home across the street from one of our stores. And every day at 2 o'clock, Jim would come in, and he'd go up to the counter, and he'd order a short drip and a blueberry muffin. Now, sometimes we ran out of blueberry muffins, you know, before we got to know Jim very well. But after a while, the baristas knew to always put a blueberry muffin away for Jim. And he always bought a short drip because he didn't have any money for anything more than that. And he would come in every day. And, of course, the baristas loved him, the store manager loved him, and he loved them. You know, they were family. It wasn't a customer with money in their pocket. It was a human being that they were making human connections with. Well, one day, 2 o'clock passes, 3 o'clock passes, 4 o'clock passes, no Jim. So So I forgot it. I need to add a little bit to the story. So every day when Jim would come in, the barista would write something on the cup or the bag. Jim, we love you. Jim, you're a great guy. He was a big Steelers fan, so sometimes they write the Steelers suck, you know? And they do, don't they? Yeah, okay. So anyway, they write all these messages, you know? It was just a way of being kind and loving to Jim. So 2 o'clock passes, 3 o'clock passes, no Jim. So one of the baristas said, I'm going to take the drip and the blueberry muffin across the street to the nursing home. So walks into the front counter of the nursing home, and there was a receptionist there, and he said to the receptionist, well, you know, where's Jim? He didn't get his coffee today. And she just looked up and she said, I hate to tell you this, but Jim passed away in his sleep. So barista went back to the store and told everybody, and everybody was very sad. And the day after that, one of Jim's children came into the store and went to the store manager and said, is there any way that all the baristas and you could come to Jim's funeral? I know how much he loved and cared for you, and I know he would really appreciate it. And the store manager said absolutely, and got replacements for everybody in the store, and they showed up the next day at the funeral. And as they walked in the front door of the funeral home, here were 3 big tables, the size of these tables, sitting in the front of the nursing home. What was on those tables? Every bag, every cup, with every message that every barista had served him. Who would have ever thought that how a small thing, like just saying I love you basically every day, would mean so much to another human being? But it does, doesn't it? So some service can be a big thing, like paying for health insurance and the salary of somebody that's struggling. But most of the time, it's the small things we do to serve other people that really matter. And yet we always forget. How many times do you walk down the hallway in your companies and don't look up? You know, you're busy and you got a meeting and you're thinking about the meeting. You don't even look up and say, hi, how you doing? You know, get in the habit of doing that. You know, being of service to others is the key in this life. And at the end of the day, the success that Starbucks has had is directly attributable to serving people. That's all it's been. And that begins and ends with a commitment of leadership. And fortunately at Starbucks, we had a leader that understood that, and he lived it every day. And, you know, when you see your people now, remember, they're human beings that need love. When you see your kids, when you see your spouses, don't shout, I love you, as you walk out of the back door. Look them in the eyes and say, I love you. And, you know, make the personal connections, and the personal connection of service to each other. And just remember one thing. It's not about the coffee. It's about serving people. Thank you very much.